Lord, it shall be upon you to show. And let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jen dam je dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju chik, dungal tang dungal chik ju tang tra wa ju chik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang minra wa ju chik, nering chak tang ni tang dra we tang num chempo la ne pa ju chik. So good evening if you've just come in. Sorry for all the disruption tonight with the internet. I don't know, it seems to be okay. Now, can you all hear me nicely? Okay, so tonight, I've called the talk tonight, Developing Boundless Vision. It's a term I crooked from a book, but I'm not using everything from that book. They called it Boundless Vision. It was just when I woke up after the EQ, the emotional intelligence that I did last time, I suddenly thought, because I've always got to send, I've got to send my newsletter the next day to Nadine for the next week. So usually when I wake up in the morning, I rely on what comes into me to be the next subject matter. So this thing was, after we'd done the EQ, and we looked at how emotional intelligence looked at through the Buddhist way, I thought maybe we need to understand how to get that boundlessness, boundless vision, or limitless vision. Boundlessness means absolutely freedom, full of potential. Now, this is such an important thing because our vision of our everyday life is absolutely narrow like this, okay? And if we don't realize how narrow our view is, then we really can't change it in any way. And some of the techniques that I want to share with you tonight are things that I really want to show you how we can start cultivating boundless, limitless vision beyond our usual dualistic manner of relating to the world and perceiving it outside of ourselves. We just don't get it. We think it's me watching everything over there. And that's why we make the mistake and fall into samsara, because nothing that is outside of you is really outside of you. It's really inside you, reflected outside of you. Now, we just can't get this. Even in Buddhism, we actually understand it a lot, but we understand it intellectually. So I want to do a couple of things with you tonight, which should be really interesting. But I want to start off even from the vision of how we see another person, which is really important before we even go on to the limitless vision, which Taisitu taught me, which is really very interesting. But I want to take this story that Rachel Rehrman gave on how we see one another. So this is what she said. As an adolescent, I was tall, pimply, and frankly homely. My family is a family of elegant women, and my second cousin, who was several years older than I, took upon herself to help me with the graces that my intellectual parents deemed unimportant. One Saturday a month, she would take me shopping and then to lunch at the Russian Tea Room, a formal and lovely place in New York. These excursions were agony for me. All the clothes I tried on hung on me. I'd grown tall rapidly and was painfully clumsy. Once I tripped over my own feet and fell full length in the street, scraping both knees and my chin and soiling my dress. My cousin was a very kind woman who seemed neither critical nor ashamed of me. She helped me up and took me to tea, bleeding chin, dirty dress, and all. After a few years of this, she married. Caught up in the demands of my education, she was training to be a doctor, and then my professional training, I lost touch with her. Some years later, when her children were in school and I was a young doctor, we resumed our shopping lunches. Now, when we entered the Russian tea room together, we would stop the conversation. The both of us, very tall and exotic looking, we would take it by storm. This might have been great fun, except for the fact that my cousin had never updated her inner picture of me. Despite the obvious changes in my looks and capabilities, she still saw me as a hopelessly clumsy adolescent, and I could not escape her unspoken expectations. We would sit down to lunch, and in the course of the afternoon, I would regress. She was now this doctor, gorgeous and everything, but she'd still regress. I would spill my red wine across the flawless white tablecloth or dribble gravy down the front of my dress. Once the strap of my purse caught underneath the bag, upsetting it and spilling lipsticks, keys, wallets, and tampons across the tea room floor. My cousin bore these incidents graciously without comment, totally unaware of her role in these happenings and the power of her private image. She would smile at me with compassion and acceptance and help me clean up the mess. It was infuriating. Now, she says we are, in a certain way, defined as much by our potential and its expression. And it's really important to look at this, because I often look at my children who haven't been living with me for a long time, and they don't understand the inner changes maybe that I've made. They still see me in exactly the same way and make comments about me in exactly the same way. And so often when I hear their comments, I think, but I don't feel like that at all. That our families do that to us a lot. They see us as we were. This is called seeing people with limited vision. Now, tonight, I want you to debate me a lot, because I want to try and teach you to expand your vision into boundlessness in every conceivable way. And once you can understand the real high spiritual way that things really are, then you can start to expand your vision. And instead of just going in, remember, when we go in to anything, we always see it through all our karmic imprints. We see people, we see situations through everything that we are. And of course, we all bound in similar karmic circumstances. So we see the same things. But I want to explain to you how that doesn't really work. So tonight, I want to just take you through my very, very, very beneficial individual teaching that I had with Taisitu Rinpoche. I can't tell you it all, but I can definitely tell you how he started me. Now, I had asked Taisitu Rinpoche, I had asked him to explain the whole Dzogchen practices to me. I didn't really know what I was asking for, but I'd asked him to explain. And after a long, hard look at me, I've told you, he said to me, okay. And then I went in for this session. Now, when I look back at the session, I mean, today, it was many years ago, and today we would definitely take our phones and just record every single word. I mean, he did draw in my book and he did write certain things for me, which I've pasted into my book and kept all these years. And the reason I've kept them is that my vision to what he was explaining to me then and how I see it now is like a totally different thing. And this is what I want all of you to understand and debate it with me. Ask your questions, really argue with me. But what is very important is to understand that what he explained to me was that he drew a box and he said, this is everyday life. Okay, this is how you see things. This is how you relate to people. This is how you relate to criticism. This is how you relate to all this work situations you're in. This is how you relate. And then he drew a thick line from the box like that, a thick line up to here. And he said, this is your stained vision, your stained vision. So he said, that wasn't boundless vision. That's how you see through your karmic imprints, all your karma, all your stuff, all your prejudices, all your biases. That's how you see in that stained version, okay? Then, when you start doing practice, and in the practice, you're now going to change things a lot. When you do the practice and you change the vision, that thick, solid line from the box becomes a dotted line like that. And he explained to me that the dotted line was when you started to experience things in a different way, okay? So what happened was the thick karmic line starts breaking up. Okay, it's got gaps in it. Now you're starting to see everything in a completely different way, not all the time. That's why it's still got all the dotted line over there. He called it experience, which in Tibetan, the word is nyam, N-Y-A-M, nyam. And he said, nyam is experience, but it's still changing all the time. It's not realization. It's experience, but not realization, which I understand perfectly now. Now, remember when I was there, I didn't understand half of this. Everything he explained to me, I wrote down, and then I tried to practice as he told me to practice, but it was really hard because you know, I didn't really understand it. Now, when I look at it, I'm absolutely enthralled with it more than ever. Now, after that dotted line, he then drew, he then went on with the dotted line right up until he drew a little circle with a line through it, a circle with a line through it. And he said to me, that is called Rikpa Tempe, Rikpa Tsepe in Tibetan, which is when you reach that particular point of Rikpa Tsepe, there's no return to the stained life, to the experiences, to the limited vision, to everything. It's no return. So when you reach that point, some of the stuff that I'm going to teach you tonight, if we get there, but it doesn't matter, I don't mind. I've got a lot of time to teach you this. But when you reach Rikpa Tsepe, there's no return to that samsaric vision. Then you see that the whole world is luminous. Even the ugly things are luminous. Now, what I had to do as part of my practice was I had to look out. I used to sometimes sit on the top of the mountain. I used to sometimes sit when it got cold in my room, and I used to just look out to the light wherever there was. And then I began to see color. But the color was so vivid and so spectacular. Look, I could only have reached that because I was in his aura. I was in his space. I was there. I couldn't have reached that on my own in any level. And that's when you realize how important the lineage is to you. And that's what Lama Yeshe told me, that when you go to the Karmapa and you come to him, and then he said, when I come to you, whoever you're teaching gets that lineage, and that lineage is so important. Because when I used to see the vivid colors, I was bowled over. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had no one to share it with. I couldn't do anything. So what I often used to do, stupidly, was jump up and run around the room and go, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I couldn't believe how the world was. Okay, I couldn't believe the way we see the world through our limited vision and our limited eyes and our limited karma. I couldn't believe that the elements that we see as coarse, when those elements are seen in their pure state, they are the most magnificent, vivid colors you will ever experience in your life. And that's all I can give you of that teaching, because I'm not qualified to give you what he gave me, even though I've practiced it for the last 10 years, but I still am not qualified to give you that until someone says you can teach it. But I can say that what I started to learn to do was to look at the coarseness of the elements of everything outside and to begin to realize that those elements, when you see them through limited vision, you see the coarse elements, they become everything. The body, the form, this is a dish, this is a bell, this is a book, this is that. And to me, in my limited vision, all those things are outside of me. And either I like them or I don't like them, or I want to get rid of them. We have no clue what it's like to be free. We have no clue when we see the world as it really is. Now, when you look at this, it's very, very interesting, because if we see how we see things, the masters give 3 types of vision, and you can stop me and question me at any point. I've got no problem with it, because I want you to absorb this so that you can start applying it even to your little life, just a little bit, okay? And the thing is that the 3 types of vision, the first vision is the way we see things in our physical bodies with our karma, that whole solid line, okay? That is called impure, illusory vision. Now, how's that? What does it feel like when I tell you that you are seeing impure, illusory vision your whole life? I want to change. I want to see pure vision. I want to see what it really is. I'm sick and tired of this impure, illusory vision. The second vision comes about because of practicing. Because the second vision, as when I was teaching the Vajrayana, those of you that have got a little bit of time might like to go back to that first session that I did on a Monday morning. You can get it on YouTube on the Vajrayana. But James Lowe says it in a beautiful way. He says, you exchange the drama of your temporary, illusionary, visionary life for the drama of the pure Buddha field, which is your practice, your Vajrayana practice. So you become Chenrezi. Tonight, you become the medicine Buddha and the beautiful everything of the medicine Buddha. So some people might say, oh, I know Marcel might say to me, but oh, that's all a lovely fantasy. Thank you very much, Melanie. But you know what? One day, you will get the shock of your life when you die, and you see that that fantasy that you had in the drama of the puja, of the practice, is actually who you are. But it's the second vision, which is called pure illusory vision. It's still illusory. Why? Because out of the essence comes this development, okay, comes these things. You're creating a drama, but at the end of the drama, at the end of the theater, as James Lowe calls it, you dissolve back into the essence. You dissolve, and then you recreate again, and then you dissolve, and then you recreate, and then you dissolve, and then you recreate. So what you create is never permanent. It's still illusory, but it's pure. It's who you really are. And when you come to death, the second vision you see is who you really are. And the majority of human beings just faint and wake up when the karmic circumstances of the third bardo come. Then they wake up, they've missed it. But all of you will not miss that. You will say, oh yes, we learned this. These are the beautiful, pure elements. These are the elements expressing themselves as Buddha families. Oh yes, I know this. And then you're free, you're out of it. And the third vision, and I'll stop to give you a chance to ask, the third boundless vision, okay, is when you actually see things as they are. So what I told you about Rikpa Tsepe at the top, now you see things, you're already at higher bodhisattva levels, and you now see things as they really are. So think of it. Some of these masters who really have attained to beautiful, pure minds, when they see us, they do not see Melanie and all her hang-ups and all her ugliness and all her wrinkles and all her nonsense and everything. They see your awakened nature. They see it straight away. And sometimes people say to me, it's very interesting, because sometimes people say to me, it's funny, you know, the Lama never asks me about my life. He asks me other things, but not about what I do in my life. Because that life is just your temporary, illusory, impure drama. And he's not interested in that. He's interested in taking you out of this wheel of life. And that's what we're learning tonight, to get out of this wheel of life and really see what it's all about, because it's really very, very interesting. And we take a long time to get to boundless vision because of our habit of conditioning. We are so conditioned to see everything through our impure karmic eyes, what our parents taught us, what we brought, and everything else, that we can't see it as truthful in any way or any form. That's a very interesting thing. Does anyone want to comment? Because I want to give you some really interesting things. Anyone want to say anything or ask anything?
Well, Mel, when I saw Lamiyeshi, on the one day I sort of found him on his little wheel, you know, he's got a mobility scooter, and I had a little bit of alone time with him, and he said to me, how is your partner? All good? So I was like, why is he asking me about this? And then I said, yes, all good. Thank you for asking, Lamiyeshi. I said he's very supportive. And then that was it. And then the next day, he didn't seem too interested. So I was like, well, why is he asking me this, you know?
You see, they don't see, they might ask you things, you know, about your everyday life. But the bottom line is, it's so interesting, because the same James Lowe says about his crazy guru that he was teaching, that there was this big university conference, you know, and everybody had arrived for it. And this Lama was asked to teach something on the Dharma at this. And he just spoke about the weather and about people's clothes and about all bull things and everything. And all these intellectuals were sitting in the audience, and they were so angry, they got up and walked out. And then finally, when there were 20 people left, he said, now I will teach you the Dharma. He said, because there was no point in teaching it to those people. They would not have been able to understand it. So he spoke about the weather, the clothes, all mundane subjects. And I found it so interesting because, you know, how come people actually do it? It's such an interesting thing. Because samsara and nirvana are back to back. There's no inherent self-existence in samsara, and there's no inherent self-existent in nirvana. When you recognize that everything is emptiness, your experience is called nirvana. When you don't realize, it's called samsara. And he says, recognizing the real nature or not, we have to keep examining again and again what role our assumptions have in creating the world in which we exist. In other words, we have to examine all our assumptions which come from our karma. How did it create the world? Now, James Lowe gives this wonderful example. He says, we're in a room. He says, how do we know this is a room? Well, we know it's a room because we've experienced rooms before. He said, but you could say, this is a bundle of wood. It's got windows, it's got planks of wood. You could say that, but we don't. We call it a room. But then he says, a dog's in the room, but he doesn't know that it's a room. He just sees it as a place where you are, or whatever the case. He doesn't know it's a room. Now think about what I'm saying when you look at your limited vision. Because just think of how many concepts. He says the reason we all agree that we are sitting in a room is because we have sufficient shared karma to have the same kind of experience. We all have these egos. We need to organize our world. We need to control our world to be safe. We need to structure and shape it. And he says this causes terrible angst, causes terrible anxiety. When you do the practice, he says, you have to totally relax all that anxiety and become who you are in the practice. Tara, Chenrezi, whoever you are, you become that when you're doing the practice, because that is taking away your assumptions. He says, we look at a phone, a cell phone. He says his father, who lived 100 years ago, he wouldn't have known what a cell phone was. You know, he didn't know what a cell phone was. He says a cat comes into the room and sees your cell phone. It smells the cell phone, there's no food there, and it buggers off. It's not interested in the concept of a cell phone. Now, when you start thinking about this, it's actually unbelievable because you realize how everything in your whole life is just limits, 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 and more limits. That's all it is. There's nothing else. We live in a world of concepts. We live in a world of structures. And we're confident in the way things seem to appear. This is the medium for exploring our world. But we build up pictures of what we see. And then the 6 realms of samsara, people see things in a different way. So we see things in a particular way because we all operate in that realm. But if we were a hungry ghost, which there are plenty of those in the realms in South Africa, they just never get enough. They never get enough. They're always taking, they always need, and however much they've got, it's not enough because they're living in a hungry ghost realm where the mentality of other hungry ghosts is the same. It's all controlling and fixed identities, a sense of self, a sense of who I am, a sense of what my parents taught me, which then influence everything. Can you all understand what I'm saying? And Keith Dowman, in his book called A Matter of Mind, he says, to understand the distinction between relative and absolute is purely intellectual and delusive. He says, but there must be a doorway a doorway that is understood as non-dual, a doorway into non-duality. He says the experience of walking through the door is like opening a door to the outside and allowing the air outside to merge with the air inside. He says it's amazing. He says, while having the eyes open and looking, it's the experience of suddenly seeing. Now, when I was sitting and suddenly saw these colors, these vivid colors everywhere in the room, it was such a shock. It was suddenly seeing what there is that I'd never seen before. And he gives that beautiful thing, Kidam, and he says, in order to recognize the reality of release from the dualistic world, there's a necessity to realize that we are stuck in the dualistic world. We're stuck. We just can't shake off the concept. We can't shake off who we are. And he says, we have to go out of the contaminated Maya. Maya is illusion, into immaculate Maya, into really pure Maya. And that recognition is an understanding of where we are. And he says, the relative has dissolved, it's gone, it never existed. So samsara is really nirvana, only when we recognize that samsara is a state of suffering. It's such an interesting thing. We have to really clearly see. He says it's irrelevant which persona clothes our body, mind, or which role we play in the drama of life. Doesn't make a difference. Because it's just a drama of this lifetime. What happens when you realize that? What happens to all your grasping? That's very, very interesting, because what James Lowe does is he takes a pen like this, okay, and he grabs that pen with his hand. So his hand is holding that pen very tightly. And he says, look at my hand. While I'm holding this pen so tightly, my hand, which is normally free, can only hold the pen. Because if I let it go, I'm letting go of the pen. And he holds onto it tight. I got such a shock because I really realized it. When he holds on tight, he says, your mind is exactly the same. You hold on. This is me. This is my child. These are my possessions. This is my husband. This is my watch. This is my. We hold so tight. That true flowing mind, which I'm going to teach you how it really operates, that true flowing mind cannot operate because we are holding and attached so tight. What do you think of that? I've given you a lot of things to really think about, and I think we must do a meditation, but just tell me what you think about what I'm saying.
Mal, Drupal Rinpoche spent a lot of time talking about impermanence and how our basically just how we are now, how we are limited in our view, we're limited in our thinking. It's mostly because of the West, it's mostly because of where we come from. And he spent a lot of time talking just about this really, and how we need the preliminary practices in order to change our minds, change our view.
It's true.
So this is just how it is, you know, but if we spend more time focusing on you know, especially the impermanence, you spent like 3 or 4 to 5 days on the impermanence.
And why do you think that was?
Because
Why did you spend?
He's really trying to get it into our heads, because Westerners come along and we're so used to attaining. We're so used to, there's a goal in mind, we achieve that goal. And now with Buddhism, there's nothing to achieve.
Nothing. Yeah.
So the more awareness you have about impermanence, or about the real nature, samsara, and samsara, the nature of samsara is suffering. That is how we are. Everybody's just, he also said that most people use meditation and the spiritual practices to feel better, but that's not what we're supposed to be using them for.
I absolutely understand. Yes, Mart, that's absolutely true. Mart?
Yeah, I think on a much simpler level, you asked, why is he focusing on impermanence? Not that I would know, but I think I find that our lives have become so much faster and impermanent, and if we don't really put it in the right, if we don't have the tools to look at it in the right way, then obviously it throws us out of orbit, or throws us into more uncertainty, into more chaos and all that. Because I do think that this impermanence that we are looking at and we are living in at the moment is so strong, so that maybe that's the reason why for us worldly beings, he's been focusing on it and say, well, how can we deal with it better?
100%. What you're saying is so important, because the thing is, it's such a shock when you suddenly realize you're getting older. I mean, I always thought I'd never get old. I really did. I really thought I'd never get old. And I feel old lots of times. I feel like this hurts in my body, and that hurts in my body, and this is this and this is that. It's a shock. But if you lived your life in the practice of impermanence, you would be aware. But it's not only that I want to show you. I want to show you how to get boundless vision, because it's so important to be able to go so that that vision is totally continued, even when you are not able to do the things you were doing before. And that continuity is like really vital in terms of when you die and when you carry on with your life. It's so clear to me when I'm looking at people to see what they carry over in their life, what they carry over from lifetime to lifetime. They just haven't ended that drama. So when are we going to end that drama and see things for what they really are? Because we're still seeing them in the absolute illusory, temporary capacity, impure. So it's really, really important that we change this, and I want to give that to you. So I think we should just do a little meditation, but I want to just say one last thing before we do, that before we explore the depth of how do you actually see in a boundless visionary way, it's important to understand how and why the Buddha of our age gave his teachings when he didn't want to give them. When he attained boundless vision, when he attained limitless vision, he said, no one will understand it, so I'm not going to teach it. So then all the gods came forward and said, but please, that's what you're here for, you've got to teach it, okay? And then Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche says, then he spoke in Cinderella teachings, the story teachings, because we wouldn't understand. We only understand the story. We only understand what we feel is relevant to us. We can't bust out of the mold to understand. So it's really important to see how the Buddha taught the three turnings of the wheels of the wheel of Dharma. And I think what Drupan was saying, Kathy, is that You really need to clean up with the basic preliminary practices. It's really important to clean up with those basic practices before you could do anything else. And that's what Taisitu Rinpoche made me do for a whole lot of weeks. He knew exactly what I'd done. He knew I'd done the Nondra and everything. Otherwise, he would never have given me all those things. Because in some way, you have to take the mask of your obscurations off. You have to take it off. It's really important because otherwise you can't see. It's like cataracts over your eyes. You've got to remove the cataract to be able to see. And the seeing is not through closed eyes. The seeing is through open eyes, because the eyes are the doorway to be able to see the boundless vision. You never close your eyes in any of those practices, training yourself to see the world as it really is. You never close your eyes. Now, isn't it interesting that people, if you take a person that's never been in Buddhism and they're going to start doing anything of meditation, immediately they close their eyes. Now, closed eyes are useless because it's to see the world as it is, not to withdraw from the world into your closed eye state, but to really see the world as it is. Fee, do you want to say anything? Because you're listening with such concentration, and then let's do a meditation.
Yeah, I think the thing I find frustrating is I can understand the idea of the boundless vision and things like that, but I get so frustrated that, I mean, how do you get there?
Yeah.
I don't mean to expect it to just drop from wherever or arise from wherever, but it's just, with my daily life and everything I've got to do in my daily life and all sorts of other aspects, I just feel that I'm never going to get there in this life because I don't have time to do all of these practices and focus on all these practices, and it's beginning to actually frustrate me greatly. I'll be honest with you, because I'm just not getting. I'm doing my best, but I can't do everything that I should be doing. Because my brain just doesn't. I'm trying to do, for example, to meditate or to do some mantras and stuff, and my mind is all over the place. Although I know it's good that I recognize that, but at the same time, I begin to think, well, I need to do this on a permanent basis or a semi-permanent basis in order to actually get anywhere. That's how I'm feeling right now.
You see, and I love that you brought that up, because it's really important. Because how long will it take us to drop the disguise and the illusion compared to how long we've been away from it? Okay, how long we've been away from it is a very long time. So to get back to it must take a lot of retraining of our minds and everything. But you see, the most important thing that I realized when I've been teaching this Monday morning of the Vajrayana classes, the thing I realized the most out of everything is the fact that if you take the word and write it on top of a book that you use often, you take the word attachment, grasping, hanging on, gripping, whatever word you want to use, you put it there. That is the important point, because think about it. If you are very, very busy in your world and you've got a million things to think about, and all of them talk about that, you've got a million things to think about. That's not such a catastrophe. What's a catastrophe is you can't finish thinking about it. You're gripping it. You can't allow the emptiness of the mind to reflect through a new reflection. So if you train much more in dropping things very quickly, so you pick up a thought, you've got to do this for work, you work it out, you write down your notes and you drop it. You don't spend the whole day going back to think about that. That is what is blocking the nature of mind from actually reflecting these boundless visions. It's the grasping not the thinking.
Well, if
Thinking
I
would
can ask though,
go.
you
Of
see,
course.
it's even so much of like fixating on a particular thought about work or stuff like that. It's more that I've got to work. I've got to go and, earn my money. I've got to do things. I can't, I mean, look, you do try small sort of practices during the course of a day, but I just feel like I'm not going to get very far in this lifetime if my life is going to go on like this.
You
That's how I
are going to get very far. You're going to get very, very, very far. You know why? Because you've got devotion and dedication. And you know what? It's such an important thing, because all of you do not use your space of time. When I look at what is available to us, like on YouTube and things like that, okay, you can be in the bathroom. If I'm in the bathroom, I've got something on. If I'm in the car, I've got something on. I never stop to try and learn the ways and then absorb them and take minutes in the day to contemplate them. And that's all you really need, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to drop the limited vision and open the other vision. Now, when you open the boundless vision, then even your work goes much smoother, because we think that intellect and whatever training, technological training you've got is what you need for your work. But when you allow the spaciousness of the mind, it's exactly like this, as James Lowe explained it. He said, you look at a stage, okay? He said, if you look at a stage is a big empty space. What is a stage for? It's for people to come on, do talks, do plays, do whatever they have to do on the stage. He said, when you do a play, then props come on the stage. The stage is full, really full, and the actors come on the stage and they act, and the stage is very, very full. And when the play ends, the actors leave, you clean out the stage, and the stage is there again in its emptiness. Now, he says your mind is like that, but we don't drop the props. We don't drop the act. We don't drop the theater. We carry it on all the time. Why not rather carry on the theater of what you are doing in your practice? So let's say you are Chenrezi. Okay, I don't care if you do 5 minutes of Chenrezi in the morning. If you go, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, I do the thing, little dedication, and then I do my Om Mani Padme Hums when I'm doing all kinds of other things, okay? I'm always doing it because I'm aware that the mantra is energy. It's putting out a beautiful energy. It can do amazing things, that mantra. Can tame people. It can do all sorts of things. So if you took 5 minutes to do even a semi little thing on Chenrezi before you went out into the world, and then you took that drama into the world. So now you are Chenrezi, and you are acting in that compassionate way to everything around you. You're still carrying that mantra, and then you're acting. And then after a certain amount of time in the beginning, it'll be a simulation, like I'm acting this role, and that's what but in the end, it will be your quality of Chenrezi in you coming out. And then it's just being aware. So somebody comes and does an annoying thing to you, and suddenly, with broad vision, you see why that person's done that to you. They haven't done it just to aggravate you. This is how they see the world. And that beautiful understanding comes through you. That is what the practice is about. It's not about blah, 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 blah. I did this for an hour. I did that for an hour. When I call to Tara, I say to Tara, give me within me your action accomplishment. so that I can do things quickly, swiftly. You in me can do that. And then that was green Tara. Now I'm very keen on white Tara. And white Tara is pure. And white Tara has the wish-fulfilling wheel and has the long life giving to everybody and is much quieter than green Tara. So you incorporate that. Then you go out and you go out into the world with that wish-fulfilling wheel, which is just helping everybody to feel better about everything. You know, that's what it is. You're leaving behind the impure, illusory vision. And then I would teach you little practices to be able to start seeing a more boundless vision. But tonight, I want to do it in principle. Yes, trying to incorporate into daily life exactly that. Because as Westerners, we live a very busy life. We really live a very busy life. And that is your daytime Dharma practice. Doesn't matter if you do 10 minutes. The girls asked me yesterday to really give them like a half an hour's good practice that they could do to incorporate everything. Now I'm going to really think about that and do it next Monday. About what could you do to have a half an hour in which you incorporate all your practice and then you carry it out into the day. Can you all understand? Pammy, can you understand what I'm saying? It's so important because you who haven't got, you haven't even got a memory of what happened to you in this life. But that's maybe an advantage, Pam. Because maybe you haven't got all the rubbish that other people had. It might be an advantage. You know what I mean? So we were going to meditate. Just think about this because I want this to be relevant to you. When I give you those teachings of all the 5 wisdoms and those kind of things in which you see the limitless, boundless vision, I want you to understand how to incorporate it in your everyday life, in your interaction with people, and most of all, in your interaction with yourself. Today I was counseling somebody who felt so, I can see exactly what happens to this man. As he's selling an idea, he's got a big sales job, and as he's selling the idea of what he wants his boss to actually give him, he starts petering out because there's a critic inside him that says he's never going to give you this. He's not going to be able to give you this. And then he says he can hear his voice is going less. And I said, why not be truthful? When you're selling a whole technology, why not be truthful? Say, this is really the advantage of us investing in this, but this is the catches about it. Why not allow your whole Buddha nature to come through in an honest way? You know, Joss, who's sitting here tonight, he always says to me, he hates it when people come in and they try and sell him some service or something and they give you a whole bullshit story, you know, about this is going to work like this. And then 3 weeks later, it isn't working and they don't want to come and fix it and that kind of thing. He'd much rather have somebody come and say to you, you know what, I will do this for you, but it may not work for very long. I'm just giving you the truth. Just be confident in the truth, I told this man. He said, you're right. I'm always thinking of the end goal. We're always living in the future or the past. We're never living in the open-ended. We're always saying, I've got to get this deal. I've got to be successful. And James Lowe says, a future, he says, you're climbing the mountain. And you want to go to the next valley because the cows are fatter there and the women are more beautiful there and everything's beautiful. And he says, and you're just coming near the valley. then you die. You don't even get to the valley. Our whole lives, we're always looking for the green valley with the fat cows and the greenness and the success story and all of this kind of thing. I mean, it's all rubbish. It's all inhibiting us. We're so scared that the fear is exactly like holding the pen. Your mind is occupied with your fear, your anxiety, your everything else, so that you can't get that boundless vision of this temporary, illusory drama. Ponder it. Let's do a meditation. As you breathe in and out, be constantly mindful of everything that arises into your consciousness, inside and outside. Whatever you think, all the changing movements of your intellect, everything is contained within the scope of mind itself. And yet, we don't trust that beautiful nature of mind. The phenomena of mind are just your relative part of your mind, your intellect, this thought, that thought, this feeling, that feeling, while the nature of your mind is always free, thought-free. Relax your physical body. Relax the energetic body, your speech, in silence. Refrain from making any designation. Relax your mind into its vivid, natural clarity. You are holding tight to the pen of striving. Open your hand and let that pen of striving go. Open your hands, open your mind. Let all the striving go. And abandon, just let it be all the mental, verbal, and physical activity. Just remain as you are, just as it is, in natural contemplation, the innate state of sameness. All the mental concepts, let them dissolve. And even you might be interested in something in your thoughts, set them free, concept free. This is called abiding in the emptiness of the ground of being. Abiding in the emptiness of the ground of being. Just abide. Open your fingers, let everything go, let everything be. Just abide in the emptiness of the ground of being. Okay, I've given you a lot tonight. I'm just going to give you a story and one thing which I'm going to go over again next time, or maybe I'll give it to you next time. I just want to say one thing, that you can go either way, into freedom or imprisonment. And when the consciousness wakes up by the life force, it can go into awareness or unawareness. And that's what I want to teach you, because it's not about hours and hours of practice. There's a critical moment, the moment when that consciousness wakes up and says, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? What have I got to achieve in this life? Do you all think that sometimes? Because honestly, I think that a lot, and I don't know if it's getting older that you think that or not, but I often think it's so important to do what you're meant to be doing in this life. Otherwise, you're in trouble, really in trouble if you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. And it's so important also that if you can train a little bit in boundless vision, when I'm finished with you, I'll give you a couple of things to wake up next week. But if you can train in boundless vision, you're okay at the gate of death. Now, isn't that important to be okay at the gate of death? I mean, it is so important that you don't miss the turn off the wheel of life when death comes. And Fee, if you've done all your dedicated learning, and as much as you can, and as much practice as you can, you just carry that awareness, and at death you will be okay. There's no doubt in my mind. Because if you're alert and you're awake and you catch your bearing quickly and you're not attached when you come to death. If you're attached to everything, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have said this, I should have done that, I should have done this, I should have moved here, I should have been better in, but if you've got all that, there's no way you can recognize. You're going to faint and wake up in the bardo of becoming and recreate with your own mind your same life again. Please let me know that all these talks are going to make a lot of you wake up. That's all. Then it will be worth it. Because I put a lot of time and effort into trying to bring you beautiful dharma so that you can wake up. So I'm gonna just end now with one little story, which is a beautiful story. Sorry. That's if I can find so many things. I'm just going to end with this little story. Here it is. Okay. A water bearer in India had two large pots, each hung on the ends of a pole which he carried across his neck. One of the pots had a crack in it, while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water to the house. The poor cracked pot arrived only half full. Some of us see ourselves as a cracked pot, but listen, for a full 2 years, this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots full of water to his house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishment, perfect for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it was made to do. After 2 years of being what it perceived to be a bitter failure, it spoke to the water bearer one day by the stream. "I am ashamed of myself," said the cracked pot, "and I want to apologize to you. I've only been able to deliver half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak all the way back to your house." The bearer said to the pot, did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the pot side? That's because I've always known about your floor, and I planted flower seeds on your side of the path. And every day while we walk back, you've watered them. For 2 years, I've been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate the table. Without you just being the way you are, there would not be this beauty to grace the house. So when you look at that beautiful story, it is a beautiful story. When you look at it, you know how often kids say to me, "No, I'm a crackpot, all the children did well at school and I didn't do so well, and I didn't have this and we didn't have that and we didn't have money and we didn't have," The whole thing is, when you want to try and develop boundless vision, and we'll go into it next week, you have to start where you are, and you have to realize that you are in the perfect circumstances for your actual incarnation and your actual progress and your actual relative karma and your actual thing. All the things that have happened to you are perfect. They're absolutely perfect because they're the mirror that shows you what you need to change. That's the only reason you're here. So you can change and wake up. It's very important. So that's enough, even though I've got a million other things to teach you, but never mind. We'll go on with it next week. Are you all okay? You okay? You're smiling, Mars. A half smile.
No, I feel, this crackpot, I can so much identify, and and I feel like also I told what I wanted to say now. I told many times, but what Fiona said, I can so relate to that, and it's all about this concept of having, I want to achieve something, I have to achieve it this lifetime, and there's nothing wrong in that, but it's also if I focus too much on it, it's actually doing the opposite of what I want to achieve. I give you an example. I thought, I have to sit in this meditation, and I have to be serene and everything. I need to watch my thoughts and all that. So we are, I think, in the third Airbnb because of all kinds of complications and all that. But anyway, so I'm sitting here in the morning and looking out of the window. I open the window and I look into the garden of this house, and there's a big cherry tree, and there's all these birds and blackbirds and starlings and this and the other, and the ones are picking the cherries and the other one is on the ground picking this and the other, and I, after 10 minutes or so, I realized that I was actually meditating.
Exactly.
And then I watched just this bird life and what was going on. I had the simplest insights, like talking about impermanence and all that, but it all somehow came to me, and I said, yeah, this is how things are. But I almost forgot to. I need to meditate. I just sat and watched the game playing on. As you said, the game on the stage, and I watched all of that, and after 15 minutes I realized actually I was meditating.
You were just looking out, and next time you have that opportunity to look out, look into the sky. That's where the colors start developing. Doesn't touch the sky. But when I started, after what Taisitu explained to me, the colors started to manifest in the sky, okay? And that's very different to sitting in shamatha meditation and watching your thoughts and bringing your mind back. The only reason you need to do shamatha and stop the thoughts is so that you can look inside. So sometimes when you're engaged in something, it serves exactly the same purpose.
Mm.
And also with cracked pots. I mean, people love other people who are cracked. Okay. I mean, when you watch girls, you know, if somebody's put on weight and everything, other girls love them because they can be with them, because they can be themselves, you know, because they're not looking at this gorgeous, glamorous girl who's appeared. You know, we put all this rubbish into our heads. It's just unbelievable, from the advertising, from everything else. We really believe in all these things and we lose the essence of our lives. And so with real boundless vision, I haven't spoken really about boundless vision, but I needed tonight to introduce you to a lot of things, because if I just went into the teaching of how you start looking at the elements and the wisdoms, and you go into boundless vision and you realize what the universe is actually about, before you get there, you've got to sort your own life out, your own crackpots. Very important. So let's dedicate for all sentient beings and for all those. I mean, now in Ukraine, they've just gone through this terrible bombing of the dam and all the houses are flooding. And I thought to myself, you know, I saw that they sent a message to all the people who live near the dam to say, get out, take whatever is essential from your house. So what would you take? Well, I would definitely take one or two of my books. You've got to take your passport. You've got to take, I mean, what do you take if you suddenly got to get out of your house and you know your house is going to drown, and with it all your possessions? We should be okay. We got our hearts. But for all those that are really running from their houses, I really dedicate the teaching tonight for them to be able to see through that all of this is just a temporary drama, transient. And for all those in the wars, in all the natural disasters, in the train crash in India, so many people have been killed and injured. For all of them, if they can just benefit a tiny bit from these teachings, then we will really be happy. Through this merit, may we achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam tamshene jegana chibala topaye sipe sole doa do warsho.